Good morning, everyone. It's 9 o'clock. Welcome to the Senate Education hearing. Will you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Senator Prentice.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So we're opening the hearing on House Bill 367. And Representative Likas is the prime sponsor. Is Representative Likas here? Representative Ladd, are you by any chance introducing 367? Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
For the record, my name is Rick Ladd. Ooh, it's loud. What name is that? Come from Haverhill, New Hampshire. The Haverhill that's in New Hampshire, not Massachusetts. And I'm here today to introduce 367. This was a bill that was amended in the House. It came to us addressing the EFA, the median family income for poverty, the qualifying eligibility level at 500%. It was reduced to 350% of the median family income of 4. The reason for our dropping it from 500 to 350 is that this is a new program, and it's a vibrant program, a program that is being actively used throughout this state. Parents have a number of issues which they're looking for alternative choice type programs. And we recognize that there are issues in schools, and all parents are not, and all children don't fit into those things. The achievement has been dropping in mathematics for the last 10 years. There are bullying issues in school that sometimes are not addressed properly. We've seen our curriculum change, and it's become less basic education and more on the social emotional side. And there are not, all these reasons coupled together and say to parents, wow, what other alternatives do I have here in the state of New Hampshire in terms of public education? And so the EFA program, as you know, was developed several years back. And as a result of that, we have a qualifying level around $90,000. That's what 300 comes to right now, 300%. And the 350 raises it somewhat. We have a number of families that are at that level of income due to the fact that there's 2 folks working within the family. And to provide an education to students, their children, yes, they can through this program, tuition them out to a public school, a private school, work with them at home, like a homeschooling type program. And many are doing that and buying materials and buying support services, therapy services, etc., with the limited dollars that they're receiving. But when one person has to stop working, that income level drops in half, away from that 90,000 down to a level. And we're finding there's many, many families that just don't qualify due to the eligibility. So we'd like to raise this incrementally over the years in front of us to get to a level where we're going to support all parents who are looking for this choice program. So I will conclude right there, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'm calling Stephen Scare.
Good morning. Thank you for this opportunity to speak.
Turn on the mic, please. Sir, will you turn on the microphone? Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Stephen Scare of Nashua, New Hampshire. And I've many years as a special education teacher, and I'm a firm believer in the separation of church and state. which is why I support this bill. Transgenderism has become the established religion of our public school. Transgenderism, as opposed to belief in gender dysphoria, teaches that children are somehow born in the wrong body. And now that it's established in schools, what's happening is people are sending their kids, and about half the kids taken are autistic, and these kids are being socially transitioned at school, and then it puts them on a path towards irreversible damage through chemicals and surgery, that being maimed and being sterilized by these medications. I'm also concerned that this religion doesn't recognize girls as a biological category and strips them of their private spaces and of having their own sports teams.
Mr. Scare, are you addressing 367, which has to do with raising the income limit for the EFAs?
Yeah, so at the beginning I said that's why I support this.
Okay.
And this is compounded by the establishment now of queer theory through the collaboration of schools, the American Library Association. And so the point is that children need alternatives. There's a lot of parents scared about what's going to happen to their children. I talk to them, they're worried each day. A lot of parents are walking on eggshells because their kids have already been socially transitioned too. So I urge you to to vote for this bill, which would give more options for children to send their kids to other schools, even if they don't have means. Everyone should have this choice. So thank you. Any questions?
Any questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Representative Luno?
Feel like I need to wipe off the mic here. So thank you very much, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Dave Luno, and I represent the people of Hopkinton, Bow, and Concord in Merrimack County District 9, and I serve on the Education Committee. Look, it's no secret, to any of you where I stand on this bill and many others that are related to it. But it's also no secret where by far the vast majority of Granite Staters stand on the EFA program. Back when it was proposed 2 years ago, we had more than 5,000 members of the public signed in opposition to the EFA program. And now that we're 2 years into the program, what we've seen happen is the program, and it keeps being cast as successful or even wildly successful, where we've got 3,200 students enrolled in it, but only about 100 of them actually dropped out of their public school because of the voucher program. The vast majority of them, over 3,000 of them, were either already attending or going to attend private or homeschool or other environments. So I don't know how we can really call that a success. Representative Ladd introduced the bill very accurately. It does increase the median household income from 300%, which is about $90,000. I'm sorry, the median household. It increases the income eligibility for a student applying for an EFA from about $90,000, which is what it is for a family of four, to $105,000. Median household income in New Hampshire is approximately $88,000 for a family of four. So we're certainly, it's already above statewide median household income and going north of that to $105,000. We've clearly seen families that have their children attending public schools weigh in on that. We've got 165,000 students in New Hampshire's public schools, and virtually none of them dropped their public school to take a voucher. I mean, maybe about 100 of them. So families have weighed in. This is more than 90% of the state of New Hampshire. So it's no secret where Granite Staters are at with this. But what is a secret is what the results of the EFA program are, because virtually we've seen no information through the oversight committee with respect to the financial accountability for the program, for the student performance in the program, or, as I've most recently been told, even a risk audit of the program. Not quite sure what that is, but these are things that are in rules that are supposed to be provided. But we're in budget season right now too, and I think it's appropriate to take a look at House Bill 367 as you know, as more than just expanding eligibility for the voucher program, but what does it say as far as policy that we're looking at here in New Hampshire? The commissioner has proposed $60 million over the next biennium to go into the EFA program. Is that really the next best use of this money? Maybe expanding the property tax relief program would be interested to some people, or maybe providing public pre-K. But, you know, and even directing public dollars to public schools that need it. It's just outrageous that this bill passed the House and landed here with a $60 million price tag to cover people already in private schools or home schools, or who knows what. And the who knows what is an important part of this as well, because unlike public schools, students who attend public schools and private schools, there's a compliance provision in statute that says they need to be, you know, if you're attending public school or private school, you need to be actually attending public school or private school. If you've got if you're an EFA student, there's actually no compliance attached to it at all. You don't have to be receiving education services at all. So you know, that's a big question, and maybe that's something that's associated with the risk-based audit. But at the end of the day, this is a policy bill, and it says a lot about our priorities. The $60 million that's been requested for expanding the EFA program is more money for 3,200 students than we provide for the community college system that serves over 21,000 students. So I'd hope that this committee would consider ITLing this bill and leaving the program as it is right now. It's the responsible thing to do for the Granite State. Thank you, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Senator Lang?
Just a simple math question. $60 million over 2 years is $30 million a year. At $4,700 a student is 6,400 students, not 3,200 students. The anticipation is a doubling of the low-income families using the program. So that,
No, that's correct. So currently, there's approximately 3,200 students in the program, and through expansion, through this bill, and I think another bill you're going to be hearing later this morning, I think that's what the commissioner projects as being, as essentially doubling the program.
follow.
Follow up?
So again, just to be clear, the $30 million that we're talking about is for 6,400 students, not the current 3,200 students. The current 3,200 students is about $15 million.
Correct.
Thank you.
That's correct.
Any other questions? Senator Fenton?
Thank you, Representative, and thank you for taking my question. When this program originally passed, the Education Freedom Account program, what was the anticipated cost?
Thank you very much for the question, Senator Fenton. I believe the anticipated cost in the first 2 years was just a little over $3 million.
Follow up?
Follow up?
And now you're saying we're at $60 million?
No, we're at just about $25 million
25.
over the first 2 years of the program, and I'm looking at Senator Lang, and I think I think that's close enough for.
So
Yeah.
sorry, follow up, just to clarify. So we started at 3 million, you said, and we're at 25 million now.
That's correct, and that's largely because in the commissioner's estimate for cost, he did not estimate that the vast majority. In fact, his estimate was that I think 75% of the students would be dropping out of their public schools to take a voucher. But what it turns out to be is about 90% of the students were already in a private or a homeschool environment when they took the voucher.
Further questions? Senator Lang?
Thank you. So again, because these programs are earmarked towards low-income families, 300% of poverty, regardless of where the student's attending, doesn't that free up resources, meaning money, in these low-income families for things like food and shelter that they're currently sacrificing potentially to give their child what they consider a better education? So this program and the expansion of this program would free up resources in low-income families to better provide food, shelter, those kind of things for their children?
Well, so these are decisions that families make, all across the board, on what things to buy, how to provide for their families and their needs for the families. The state of New Hampshire, through local school districts, provides an adequate education for all of our children. I think that's what the Constitution says, and it's pretty clear from the EFA program, from the not only the statute that defines the EFA program, but also the rules, that there's no accountability. I mean, an adequate education is defined by the accountability that the Department of Education has to do to make sure that schools are spending the money, delivering on the inputs. We talked about an input-based accountability system and a performance-based accountability system. Those two parts are actually in a bill that has cleared this committee, Senate Bill 266, and is now in House Education. So. Yes, I mean, there's a lot of things that the state of New Hampshire could be directing these monies towards, and it could be directed to reducing property taxes for retired couples who are living on a fixed income, probably at a lot less than 300% of the federal poverty line. That's currently $90,000 for a family of four. And it could be directed to early childhood education, to pre-K programs. And we've got young families that are spending out of pocket significant dollars on pre-K programs. It could go to that instead. So I'm just saying, in the overall scheme of things, we want to. I agree. We want to help families, but what are the priorities that the legislature has when it looks at what is the next best thing we want to do for Granite Staters with $60 million of state funds?
Thank you very much.
Thank you very
More
much.
questions? Aubrey Friedman?
Madam Chair, committee members, Aubrey Friedman, I'm from Bridgewater. I speak definitely in support of this bill. This will make it easier for families to access the EFA funds. And the fact that if you make it easier, more families are going to access it tells me government schools are a little bit lacking, or people would be trying to get out of them. So, and just because a child comes from a family that's not poor, is that any reason they shouldn't have more options for their education? Now, another point is, if more families are able to get out of government schools, this is going to be more competition for the traditional government schools. Normally, we would think, I think most people would agree, competition is a good thing. Why not have it also for education too? And lastly, the Department of Education, if you look at the fiscal note, they have a little analysis here, different scenarios. Is it going to cost more or less, or for local or state or in general? And to me, it's kind of convoluted because they don't really know. But at the end, if you look at the argument, they say districts may feel pressure to reduce their local expenditures to better fit the reduced population served. So that sounds to me like the cost of local taxes is they're going to be pressured to go down. There are less kids will be attending the traditional government schools, so property taxes should go down a little bit. That's a good thing. Everybody's complaining about property tax bills. We know the education part is anywhere from 50 to 70% of your tax bill, depending on your town. So decreased property tax bills benefits everybody. So for those reasons, I totally support this bill. And that's it.
Thank you. Questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thank you very
Okay,
much.
thank you.
Brian Hawkins.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Good to be back in Senate Education. For the record, Brian Hawkins representing NEA New Hampshire today. I'll try not to repeat. I do have written testimony, so I'll try not to repeat some of the points that was brought up earlier by Representative Luno. We are here in opposition to HB 367. And first, I think we've obviously had our position in the past here on the policy of this bill and what it does. Our opposition on this bill is that we think it's premature to expand this program. As was said earlier, we haven't received much data and information as to the indications as to whether the program is being successful or not. For various reasons, there has not been more than a couple of meetings of the Oversight Committee that looks into the accountability of that program. That was added to the original bill last year, 2 years ago, as a sort of a key component to that bill passing. I also think that before expanding, the legislature needs to look at the structure of this program. Does it still make sense to have it contracted out to a third-party organization that is using 10% of the funds, not toward education, but for administrative costs? And then also, last year, the legislature, in a bipartisan fashion, passed House Bill 1135. And that takes effect on October 1st of this year. And we should really wait till that is in effect. And what that bill did was that required a performance audit of the EFA program and required the LBA to look at the things like the initial and continued eligibility for the program, controls for determining what are qualifying expenditures, the identification and recovery of ineligible expenses, procedures and controls for the transfer of funds, public reporting of participation, student outcomes and expenditures, some of the things I just talked about, demographics and other items. So it seems premature to go ahead and expand the program now before the legislature has looked at, do we have all of the pieces in place here in assessing that from the nonpartisan legislative budget assistant. And then finally, I just wanted, the fiscal questions came up about the program. So we know that the estimates for the initial biennium of this program were significantly lower than the actuals. The new figures, I think it's important for the Department of Education. I have not seen as to whether the $30 million per year indicates just continuing under existing law, or does it mean the expansion to 350, or does it mean the expansion that also includes the later bill? And that's a question I think that it ought to be more clearly articulated by the department. I know it came up earlier, but we saw rankings come out just yesterday from National Education Association ranking New Hampshire 49th in state aid to our communities for our public schools. To me, before we take the income eligibility level to $105,000 for a family income of 4, which is what this bill purports to do, proposes to do, excuse me, and fund that parallel system, we really ought to look at, you know, how our funding model address our shortage in the workforce first, do the performance audit first, before we take this next step. And so with that, I will close my testimony, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the committee members? Senator Lang?
Just a couple of questions. So number one, all fiscal notes are provided based on current law. So I
Right.
understand that. So that's where the $30 million comes from. It's what he expects based on current law.
I was referring to
Follow-up
the
question
budget
to that.
proposal.
So my real question, though, is you spoke about ranking of the state in education, but isn't it true that Forbes magazine has the ranking of this education provided to the students in New Hampshire is second in the nation, that we provide the best education, second best education in the nation?
Well, I'll take the opportunity to gloat about the phenomenal educators we have in the state here, and I don't disagree with that. I guess I was speaking more to the role that the state plays in funding education, not our ranking and performance on education. So,
Follow-up?
But wouldn't that indicate the two aren't correlated? We have the second best education, the second worst education funding formula, the two aren't correlated. More money isn't going to necessarily equal better education.
well, and I don't think when the funding commission met that was that they weren't necessarily talking about dramatically expanding the number of dollars that we necessarily spent overall on education, but they were talking, and this legislature with the budget right now is talking about what does it make sense for the state share to be in that education, particularly when you have communities that have a much easier time, I wouldn't say an easy time, but an easier time in raising funds. You know, there's a big difference when we're talking about property values that you can raise dollars from. I don't have to tell you this, I'm sure, in Berlin versus, you know, in a Portsmouth, for example. And so, again, I would just reiterate that, you know, I'm really talking about maybe the priority ought to be looking at that formula and the aid that we can provide to targeted types of aid we can provide to communities before we go and expand a program like this, which also is, while I think Representative Luno mentioned, you know, most of the funds here are new funds. These aren't, for the most part, I think 75–80% of the students are not coming out of public school to take advantage of this program. So those are new dollars. But the few who are, you know, those phase out grants are going away. I believe they expire in 25. And so, so there is an impact there on the local level too. I think the fiscal note may mention that as well, but I'll conclude my answer there.
Senator Fenton?
Thank you for being here and taking my question. So I just want to clarify, we're talking about the original bill that was massively over budget. We're talking about raising even more for that now. And according to your testimony, there hasn't been enough data, very little information on how well the program works, and barely any meetings of the oversight committee. Is that correct?
That's right.
Thank you.
Seeing no more questions, thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I think at this point, I'm going to have to ask that if you have a written testimony, please give it to us. If not, if you can limit your verbal testimony to 3 minutes, that would be perfect. Otherwise, we'll be here a long time. So the next person I will call is, let's see now here, Representative Ladd.
I saw him heading into the elevator.
Okay. How about Representative Clayton Wood? Wood, fine.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for taking my testimony. I had a testimony to make, but I just want to make a few points. I know we're running late in time. I'm very much in favor of the EFA program. I've been working in school systems now for over 10 15 years in the traditional school system, the school boards. I've done about everything you can volunteer for in a school. And I'm really in favor of the EFA program, and I would like to make this testimony not in light of what's right and what's wrong with education, but the benefits that I can see in the EFA program just in the short amount of time that I've been involved with it. We've homeschool our family. There seems to be a tendency to think that people are looking for something different in education. There's usually a reason for that. Most people homeschool. It changes their life incredibly. So I don't think that's the first choice of anybody out there, is to homeschool and do this yourself and go after EFA money. It's usually the result of something else. I think the cost shows that it's working. I know everybody wants to get all this information. I want you to know most of us don't have time to wait. You know, we have kids in school. By the time we do all of these checks and balances, these kids are not succeeding. And then what do we do with those kids? So a lot of children miss the opportunity if we don't get our act together. There's 3 pillars that I believe the state legislation done it right with this. There's 3 pieces that I would like to see in everything we do in education. Fundamental, puts the parents in charge, most effective. I know there's a lot of talk about this, but anybody that knows anything about educating their kids knows the parents are the way to make anything more effective when it comes to dealing with these kids. We have to deal with the children every day. Everything's a problem. Nothing major, just getting them to eat is a problem. So you got the right people in the right position to do it. Flexibility. I've never seen a program that has as much flexibility as the EFAs. I've been trying to tell people to use this program so we get the numbers up. Most homeschoolers are nervous or reluctant to use state money for anything. They feel like they do it better on themselves. And I'm trying to tell them that the flexibility of this program is amazing. It allows them to do things they wouldn't be able to do. The other part of it was the broad education focus. Don't see many things that allow for exceptional students or for students that need specialized training, because they're pretty much gifted, or they have insights to or skills that are the types of skills we want to develop, but they need something more than what's in a traditional school. You know, and this program is one of the first ones that I've seen that done it. I know people that have taken computer courses through this program. These are the bits and pieces that show me that you've done it right. So I think what I want to suggest is I would like to see this bill pass, because I think we need more people using this program and less. Getting the interactions with how the money is working, I think that's something that we can do very easily by just questioning the people who are using it. I'm not using EFA money. My children are in college now. All 3 of them went to school. We homeschooled them to 12th grade. And, but I would not have a problem telling you how I'm spending your money effectively. So if you have, that'll be the end of my testimony. If you have any questions, I'll be more than glad to help you.
Thank you. Questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have Mary Wilkie.
Yes, thank you for hearing me. My name is Mary Wilkie. I live in Concord. I'm here to oppose HB 367. I don't want to repeat what other people have said, but I want to add on a couple of additional points. One of the previous speakers brought up the fact that a performance audit is going to be done by the LBA in sometime after October of this year. And I listened to the committee that considered that, the bill that required that. And originally it had an earlier effective date, and that committee, it was a Senate committee, I can't remember which one, they voted ought to pass on an amended version of the bill that delayed the effective date till October of 2023, because the program was so young that they felt it would be premature to try to audit it any sooner than that. And it seems to me that if they can't collect the information they need to audit it so early, we shouldn't be expanding it without that information. Somebody brought up the the Legislative Oversight Committee, which was created by statute, and it's only met once, except for organizational meetings, and that was more than a year ago. The next meeting, the statute required that they file annual reports based on their monitoring of the program. A report was due last November and was never filed. The next meeting has been scheduled for June 5th, which is 3 days before the deadline for the Senate to act on all House bills. So that schedule has basically guaranteed that any information that might come to light as a result of their meeting will have no influence, can have no influence on lawmakers who are deciding these bills. I feel like the public counts on you to manage public funds and to manage them prudently based on a careful assessment of the facts and not to turn a blind eye to relevant data. The risk audit was brought up earlier, and I had looked into that. The regulations require an annual risk audit that be done for the scholarship organization. And I had looked, and it had to be filed with the DOE. The DOE does have on file what's called a financial audit. It's my understanding that that's different from a risk-based audit, that a risk-based audit would be looking for things like, are there opportunities for fraud? Are there appropriate measures in place to make sure that doesn't happen? I did speak with the director of the scholarship organization this morning, and she says that the document on file with the DOE is a risk-based audit. And I don't know, I'm not an accountant, I don't know, but I have read it, and it doesn't talk about things like, are there procedures in place to prevent parents from fraudulently using state money, or are procedures in place to prevent education service providers from, doing things that we wouldn't want them to do, from not providing what we expect them to provide. So it seems to me that after a year and a half, and after the expenditure of more than $22 million, there are fundamental questions that we haven't had answered, and in some cases, we're kind of refusing to answer. Has the AFA program led to positive outcomes for students? How does the scholarship organization monitor these 700 plus private education service providers that are now taking public funds? Are safeguards in place, and are they sufficient to prevent parents from using money in ways that they're not supposed to? And that's a complicated issue because, for instance, a parent could order a computer. Certainly a child might need a computer to do their schoolwork, but what if the parent buys the really expensive one that the child doesn't need because the parent wants to do gaming? There's a lot of places where parents can take advantage, and the question is, are we watching carefully enough? Why have only 6% of EFAs gone to students with disabilities when they comprise 18% of the students in the state? Are all the education service providers complying with non-discrimination laws? And on and on. There are a lot of questions we don't know the answer to, and we're talking about a lot of state funds. And I just ask that you ITL this bill because we just don't have the data to support expanding this program. We don't even know how it's running right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Kate Baker, Demers.
Hi, thanks for having me. Kate Baker Demers, the Executive Director of Children's Scholarship Fund. And I want to stay on topic. There's been a bunch of things I think that are off topic. I do feel like I need to address a couple of them since I heard a few things that didn't really make sense to me. But first, I want to tell you that in our application cycle this year, there were 340 children that applied that were over the income limits. Of those children, about 100 of them fit into this category that you're discussing today, the 350% increase. And so when you pass this bill, if you're to pass this, you would affect the lives of about 100 children, giving them opportunities that they otherwise didn't have. Another piece of information I just want to share with you is that we did conduct a risk-based program audit. It cost us $75,000 to do that audit. It's on the Department of Education's website. What it says in it that shows that it's a program audit is that the auditors had no concerns about anything and they audited everything. And so that's how you know an audit is done well and or our work is done well, is the auditors say they have no concerns about anything that was done. In addition, we do have a 4-star Charity Navigator rating, which is the highest possible rating that a nonprofit can have for transparency and accountability. And we look forward to that LBA audit because we know when the LBA audits the Education Freedom Account program, they're going to find the same thing that our internal or external auditors found, that we're running the program with policies and procedures as they're required and doing everything correctly, and that the program is bulletproof. So I wanted to just clarify that point. The other thing I want to share with you is if you are curious about the data in the program, the Department of Ed has a website set up for all of the reports that we give them. We report to them quarterly, and those reports are on their website by date and type. So you can see the enrollment reports there, you can see the expense reports there by period, and we've been giving them those reports quarterly so that they can put them on the website. We've learned over time, I want to thank Senator Prentice because she's done some corresponding that's helped us to put those reports in a way that it's more understandable. So Senator Prentice, now we have them done by category and vendor so that you can see the vendor and then what the purchases are. So you'd be able to see, for example, like our discussion, Amazon, and then which pieces of the categories were purchased at Amazon. So that's been a collaborative effort. I feel like the feedback that we've received from people about how they want those reports to look, again, we've been responsive and we really lean into transparency. When someone asks us a question and wants information, we want to get it to them as soon as possible. So the last thing I want to leave you with is this bill you're discussing this morning that increases the income limit to 350%. Our biggest concern is a gap in Children's Scholarship Fund in single parents. It's a household of 2. So in the current 300% of poverty line or below, a family of 2, which would be a single parent and a child, the income limit is $54,000. So if you're earning $55,000, you can't get help. And those families have an urgent need. If you're earning $55,000, $56,000, $60,000, you still don't have enough money to be able to execute or take action on an education opportunity for your child. If you're in an emergency situation, if you have if you want to participate in the program. And so I feel like this bill really addresses that need. Also taking into consideration inflation has been 8 or 9% in the past year. I think by increasing the income limits to 350, you're conservatively catching the inflationary increases that we've seen, in addition to providing an opportunity for families who are just a little bit over the income limit, but still may be in high need. So I'm happy to take any questions that you have for me.
Questions from the committee members? Senator Lang.
Thank you. So just to be clear, this bill would, in the current model you just did, in the current year, you just did applications. 100 families low-income families would have been served by this
That's right.
bill.
Had it been 350, there, yes, would be 100 children that would have been able to participate that couldn't otherwise.
From low-income families.
Yes,
Thank you.
Seeing no more questions, thank you very much.
thank you.
Deborah House. Welcome.
Good morning, Chairman Ward and members of the committee. I am Deborah House from the American Federation of Teachers, New Hampshire, and I am pleased to be here this morning to address the committee. I'm here on behalf of the 165,000 public school students and our 4,000 members, most of whom work in pre-K through 12 public education, as well as in public universities across the state of New Hampshire. I'm speaking both in opposition to HB 367 and HB 464. And mainly that is because Those 165,000 students have been waiting decades for the state of New Hampshire to fulfill its obligation to properly fund public schools. You have a constitutional duty that's been reaffirmed in numerous court cases to appropriately fund an adequate public education. We should not be starting voucher programs or expanding them until that duty is met. So I have to oppose both of these bills on that reason. Because we know that tax money is limited, any money that is spent on a voucher program competes directly with money that should be spent in public education. It drains desperately needed funding from neighborhood public schools that most New Hampshire children attend and diverts money that could be used providing programming such as well-funded science labs, enrichment activities, languages, up-to-date literature, whatever is needed in the public schools. I hope we can all agree that educators, lawmakers, parents, and other New Hampshire citizens all want our kids to have access to high-quality, accountable education so they can thrive and excel. I also hope that we all agree we should not be wasting state funds, which are taxpayer funds. We also should not waste children and families' time and hopes on flawed or failed educational experiments. Expanding the state voucher program would be extremely costly, both financially and with our kids' futures. Now, I understand that the Oversight Committee, for various reasons, has not met as it was intended or as frequently as was intended, so we do not have the data that shows how this voucher program has been working. But across the country, we have seen studies of other voucher programs. And 2016 study of an Ohio private school program, which targeted students from low-performing schools or who are economically disadvantaged, found that voucher students had fared worse academically compared to their closely matched peers attending public schools. And I have this data for you, and I'll be giving it to you. They also showed that such impacts appeared to persist over time, even when they returned to public schools. The 2018 longitudinal study from Indiana's Choice Scholarship Program found that low-income students who switched from public to private school using a voucher experienced worsening math achievement throughout their time using the vouchers. 2019 study in Louisiana voucher program found that after 4 years, voucher students performed noticeably worse on state assessments than their public school counterparts. We don't want to be spending our limited and valuable tax dollars on something that's not going to help our students. Beyond that, we heard 2 weeks ago an argument or a discussion, a spirited discussion in this committee about whether we could afford to provide nutritional meals to students at 300% of the poverty level. We all agreed that students who are fed and not food insecure perform better in school. But I understand the decision was that that was too much of an expense for our state to take on. How can we possibly think of increasing an expense for paying for non-public schooling at this point through a voucher program? And with that, I will conclude my testimony and give it over to other people because I know there are other people waiting to testify. I do have written testimony complete with graphs and charts.
Thank you.
Turn that.
Any questions from the committee members? Seeing none. Senator, excuse me. Ms. Howe.
Just one question. So your last comment there was talking about food security in families and low-income families specifically. And wouldn't you agree that part of this program that helps low-income families that don't think that public school is the right choice for their specific child, that by giving them the funds to be able to go to what they consider an adequate education for their specific unique child, that it frees up resources for things like food and shelter?
Have you met your
provides-
obligation to the 165,000 students in public school yet?
Okay.
We can go back and forth.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Tom DeRosa. You all set? Okay, thank you very much. Sarah Scott?
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee for the opportunity to provide testimony here today. My name is Sarah Scott, and I'm the Deputy State Director for Americans for Prosperity here in New Hampshire. On behalf of Americans for Prosperity New Hampshire and our activists across the state, I urge you to support House Bill 367, which would expand the Education Freedom Accounts program. As you know, the current program is open to families earning up to 300% of the federal poverty line, and this would be a very incremental increase to 350%. Since the Education Freedom Accounts program launched in 2021, we've seen over 3,000 students taking advantage of the opportunity to find an education that really fits their families. Unfortunately, this option does not exist for thousands of families in the Granite State. There are lots of families in New Hampshire that would benefit from this bill. After the program first launched, I heard from many families who were interested in taking advantage of the program and wanted to know if they were eligible. And it was really hard to go and tell somebody that you made just a little bit too much money to find a better education for your child. One of the toughest stories I heard was actually from a mom of 4 kids, and she explained that while most people's income dropped during COVID, her income had actually gone up just for a year. She expected her income to come back down the following year, but this temporary increase in income actually put her about $800 over the limit. So because of that extra $800, her kids were forced to stay in an education that really wasn't working for them for an extra year. So we've talked a lot about just giving the program some time, but a lot of these kids don't have that time. A year in a child's life who may be 8, 10 years old, a year is a really long time. A lot of those kids don't have the opportunity to just wait while we decide whether or not we agree with the program. I think we've seen great results so far from the program, and I think we should definitely be giving families the opportunity to see if this is the option that works for them. So it's for these reasons that we ask that you support the passage of this legislation and allow more students to choose the education that works for them.
Thank you very much. Questions from the committee members? Senator Prentice.
Thank you, Senator Ward, and good morning. Thank you for joining us today and taking my question. So you mentioned a family where mom stated that during COVID, she actually made more money, or her family did, than less. Was that family already enrolled in the program, or they wanted?
No, this was a family who was looking to enroll in the program.
Okay. Follow up? Follow up. Thank you very much. So are you aware of any other public programs here in the state of New Hampshire where there isn't continual eligibility checking on, like, once you're enrolled, you are basically means tested every year?
I'm not familiar with the programs, but that's not really my area of expertise. I apologize.
Okay. Are you aware that this program isn't means tested every year?
Yes, I am aware. I think that that really provides a great opportunity for stability for kids. If we're telling students that their education might change on a year-to-year basis, pulling a student in and out of different education systems can really have detrimental effects on their education.
Follow up.
Follow up.
So thank you again. And it's not that I'm not unsympathetic to what you just said, but when we're using public dollars across, when we look at it like across the continuum here, all other programs are basically tested. So that's just, it has to do with accountability and transparency. Although I've done some work, as you heard, from the Children's Scholarship Foundation or organization to help move transparency along, this is another area that's important. So that's why I wanted to know about that particular family that you raised the question or made the statement about. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. We have a few more people who like to speak, and I think at this point I'm going to have to limit it to 3 minutes per person. So the next person is Rachel Goldsmith. I could do somebody else ahead. Representative Sarah Ors.
Hello, I'm Representative Sarah Ors. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for hearing my testimony. So I am a product of the public schools, my wife and I. Our 4 children are products of the public schools. My daughter, Shane Marie, is an assistant principal, a Spanish teacher. My son, Kian, an attorney. Our daughter, Erin, an attorney, and our son, Caleb, a nuclear engineer. So I personally, in years past, our children are now in their 40s. I hate to admit that, but the public schools were doing a great job. Nowadays, I'm not saying they don't, but I do support EFAs, and I support all private schools simply because I believe it promotes competition, it makes the students better, and it makes the schools better. Our children went to farming schools in rural parts of the state. My wife and I were in big city schools. We've all turned out just fine. But things in the public schools have changed, and I think we need the competition to lower the costs and improve the students. We know that in society, competition improves everything that I can think of. Cars, whether it's SpaceX and Elon Musk launching rockets, competition improves the situation, it improves the students, it improves the environment. We're talking about the cost of the students. In public schools, the cost per student, with data I just read this week, about $17,000 to $22,000 per student when you include the capital costs of schools. Private schools average approximately $5,000 to $8,000 a year per student.
One more minute.
I mean, we are thinking, thank you, we are thinking about saving costs and so on. Private schools, any private schools is going to help improve that. The rep that talked about earlier mentioned, what would be taught in private schools? Well, I can assure you, we have found out that because of COVID, we have found out that public schools are teaching critical race theory, communism, and other things, and unmentionable pornography, which with children in this room, I'm not even going to list, but otherwise I might. So in conclusion, I would just like to say that although I am a product of public schools, and my children, who I've already mentioned are very successful, are products of public schools, things have changed. And I think it's time for competition. Competition will lower our costs, not only in our communities, will lower our costs in our property taxes, but will also lower our costs per state. And I'm willing to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
It's Ms. Goldsmith? Okay.
Good morning. Thank you very much. My name is Rachel Goldsmith. I'm a homeowner in Manchester, and across the 2 properties that we own, we'll be paying $20 every single day for the next 20 years, at least, towards failing public schools. Not a single cent will be coming back to the education of our 4 children. In order to ensure that all children who are interested in the kind of education that homeschooling and alternative education offers, I am here in support of this bill. I don't really want to take up too much of your time, and I appreciate your flexibility with our not being here earlier. And that's, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Any questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thanks. All right.
Woods, I think, right? Representative Woods did speak, right? Okay, you're all set. And we have Teresa Rosenberger.
speaking, you have your right hand.
Oh, I'm sorry. She doesn't want to speak. Representative Potenza?
Thank you, Chair. My name is Representative Kelly Potenza. I represent Rochester's wards 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 6. I'm here in support of actually all of the bills that are on the docket. I'm supposed to be in committee right now, so I'm going to try to make that as quick as possible. I strongly support all of these just because my family has been fortunate enough when COVID happened to participate. And I had to, of course, stop my job, and it was an unbelievable experience for our family and a huge hardship. So my girls were able to utilize this because for the first time they were actually in public school for a year, and so we were qualified. And it's been such a huge blessing for our family. I can't even begin to imagine. So, but we're not going to qualify anymore for the, there's two kinds, of course. You've got the education freedom accounts, which once you qualify, you get to keep, which is fantastic. And I think it speaks to having to switch your kids out once they're solidified in their program and stuff is, would be detrimental in so many ways after they've made roots and friends and alliances with teachers and all of those types of things. So the other piece is the education tax credit, which we will not qualify for. I have some wonderful information that I'd love to give to the committee as well, ABCs of school choice and some other things, but I'm just going to go through the 10 reasons. School choice is actually good for student safety, and I'm not sure if you know what's going on in the country and in some of the inner city schools. Manchester, for one, has the amount of violence that's taking place. Student on student is
Yeah, one more
unbelievable.
minute.
Gosh, okay, quick. And so having that safety aspect of parents being able to utilize their money is huge to put their children in a better position. School choice increases parental satisfaction and involvement. That's a fact. There's tons of studies. I'll give them all to you. Education choice can give students an education tailored to their needs. Fantastic. School choice provides options for low-income families. We know that, of course. School choice leads to higher graduation rates, all based upon fact. A 21% increase in graduation rates. School choice actually saves taxpayer dollars. There's so many opposition, and unfortunately, it's just misleading, and it's false when they say that it's actually taking money out of public schools, because it does not. And I'll prove that to you as well. I'll send that to the entire committee.
Okay, your 3 minutes are up. Could you
Okay.
wrap it up, please? Thank you.
School choice puts competitive pressure on schools. I know that there was another representative that spoke to that. Actually, we have wonderful studies about that in Florida and Milwaukee. 8, school choice makes schools more accountable. 9, school choice makes education dollars go farther. And 10, school choice helps cultivate citizens. Please support all of the bills. Yes, she has a question. I'll take it.
Questions from the committee members? Senator Prentice.
Thank you, Senator Ward. Thank you, Representative Potenza, for joining us today. So did you just say, I think it was in number 2 or number 3, that public money isn't moving away from public schools to private schools? I just want to get clarity on this.
Which one was that? School
It's either
choice
2 or
increases.
3. I know the first one was about safety.
Yeah, school choice leads to higher graduation, saves taxpayer dollars. Is that the one?
Can you read a little from that?
Okay, so basically, tax credit scholarships, this is different than that, but it's still all from the same bucket, is actually education savings accounts. They're cost a fraction of what is spent. from the public system. So it's basically a win-win. If a child is costing $25,000 to be educated in the public school, and based upon the average right now is like $4,600, that's a savings. So one study found actually, it was out of Washington, D.C., that their scholarship program, it's a positive impact because of the graduation rates, produced actually a $2.62 return for every dollar spent on the voucher program. So there's tons that comes to that. And as you know, the money that's generated from lottery and as well as the gambling that we have is all going into that trust fund. So that's really what's supporting this. It's not, no town money is being taken away from this at all. Towns are not losing any money at all.
Follow up? Thank you, Representative Potenza. So if a community is getting the adequacy aid per student, $4,000 plus, okay, and that money then goes with that student to a private school or goes into a homeschooling situation, but I'm going to focus more on, say, a private school right now. Are you saying that money isn't a loss to the community?
It is not a loss to the community.
So if they were depending on that adequacy aid that came with that student and it went to a private school, that's not money that's moving from the public sector to the private sector?
No, the money follows the student.
Correct. Is it public or private money that's following the student?
It's taxpayer money. It's
taxpayer money, so it's so
it's state money.
I'm not trying to spot, I'm trying to be respectful. So it's public money.
Yeah, it's our money.
Oh, my money too.
That's correct.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. Thanks.
So if you would,
Any other questions? Would you give that to our legislative aide and he will distribute them? Senator Bland.
It's okay. I sometimes pause when I say that myself. So Representative, I think what your point was, and I'm just trying to be clarify here, is that the current average cost between state dollars and local dollars is around $20,000+ per student. Under the EFA program, the state cost between local and state dollars is capped at $4,700. And that's the savings differential you're speaking about.
correct.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right.
We have one last person, I think, Amy Shaw.
I speak a lot, so you'll have to keep me tuned in. So I'm going to try and stay close to this topic of this bill.
You've got 3 minutes.
Ouch, this one can be done in one. The other two, I'd like to bank up my time. So basically, just a story. We are a middle-class working family. We are lucky not to have a gigantic mortgage. If we did, we would be in huge trouble. But basically, my husband makes $17 an hour. He got a 50-cent raise. 50 cents put us over the limit for Medicaid, for a ton of assistance. So when we come to income limits, the numbers aren't really telling us, like, we lost hundreds of dollars that we could have used, I guess. How do I want to put it? Our cost now that we do not have state assistance because we made a 50-cent raise has now put us so that we have hundreds and hundreds and $1,000s of bills out of our own Medicare costs, which, that is okay. That is what everyone has to do. But an income limit of 300%, it doesn't really tell you the story behind it. So it's just kind of, 300 to 350, what does that mean? It means a lot. Like, it would mean the safety of our kids. It would mean us to have the income that we needed to help our kids thrive. It would mean a lot. So I'll take any question, but I would rather talk on the other two more.
Thank you so much for coming this morning, and thank you for taking my questions. So just to clarify, so you're currently not using EFA dollars?
Oh, no, we are. I'm talking about just income limits in general. We're talking about 300% and what that means.
Okay.
we probably fall, you know, in the higher end of the 300%. But if you asked me what our bills were, if you asked me our costs, you asked me what that money's being used on, it is used to help our family because our family has special needs. We have extra needs. We have extra things we have to worry about and pay for. So it's like getting a 50-cent raise shouldn't be something that comes back against us. If I went and got a job and it made like $2 more and it took us off of, you know, like the help that we had been getting, but it's not enough to help us thrive on our own. It's that middle of the crack. So it's 300 to 350. It's just a little bit more of a barrier so that we feel safe and secure. Like if my husband got another 50-cent raise, would we qualify? I don't know. Like it's just kind of like it's a safety net. It's not just because you make, you know, $2 more than the income limit does not mean that you do not need that help and that you are not suffering.
Thank you very much. Okay, so anybody else in the audience who wants to speak on 367? Janet Ward? Welcome.
Thank you for
3
having me.
minutes.
Right. On April 12th, 2023, in response to my request for information on oversight of the EFA program, I received an email from your chairman, Ruth Ward. She explained, and I quote, that the original committee was organized in January 2022. It had one meeting, no report was generated. End of quotation. Chairman Ward then explained that a variety of factors had prevented the committee from meeting, reviewing oversight information, and issuing a report. So I have no way of accessing critically important information regarding the EFA program. Before you today are two bills, House Bill 367 and House Bill 464, which recommend the expansion of the EFA program. To date, there has been no comprehensive study to determine whether the EFA program has been shown to have had a positive effect on student outcomes, nor that it has been properly and prudently overseen by the private entity charged with its financial operation. Why would a legislator or any thoughtful taxpayer consider increasing the amount paid for a product before that product has been carefully studied and has demonstrated its value and efficacy and prudent financial operation? As a taxpayer, I am being required to pay for a product that I have not personally been able to oversee in any way. Unlike public schools, which are not government schools, they are community schools, which hold public school board meetings and by invitation open the doors of public schools to taxpayers who wish to visit, EFA-funded private, religious, or homeschool settings do not invite my participation in any way, though they do accept the nearly totally unregulated use of my tax dollars. Consider our nation's history. In the 18th century, our nation was born of a Revolutionary War fought because of taxation without representation. Through the EFA program, New Hampshire taxpayers are enduring taxation without representation. Please consider this reality as you reflect on House Bill 367 and House Bill 464, and please vote against these unjust bills.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the committee members? We're reducing it.
Thank you.
Ms. Ward, I have your email and I will respond to you about your question on the Oversight Committee. I will send you a personal note.
You actually did send a personal note from which I quoted. You're suggesting you're going to send a follow-up?
There's a follow-up, yes. I
Thank you.
will let you know.
I look forward to it.
There's a couple of people have asked about it.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Please come up. State your name.
Thank you. It's Lynn Briggs from Amherst. I've lived in Amherst for 34 years. I've raised 3 boys who graduated from the public school. I did take them out at one point for elementary and middle school due to, I'll just say extenuating circumstances. My husband is a police officer of over 40 years. The bullying, the attacks, and the safety issues were huge. We had to remove our children. At that time, we didn't have the luxury and the choice at all to be able to change our children except to private schools, which I had to bear 100% the burden of in addition to my taxes. But here are the facts that I've been researching. I know that an EFA, Education Freedom Account, child is less than 1/4 of the cost of a New Hampshire public school student. Many people call EFAs a voucher program, and that is inherently misleading and flat out inaccurate. An EFA is utilizing state money, taxpayers' money, and every EFA children is educated free to their town because the money does not leave the town. Amherst is currently crowding around $25,000, $26,000 per pupil, and the literacy rate is, in the toilet. It costs less, and why do I say that? Because for the past 2 decades, student enrollment in New Hampshire has experienced a stark decline, while the pandemic accelerated this in the fall of 2020. So the average of New Hampshire EFA award is $4,600, and the average public school cost per student is $20,000. And again, that's the average. And again, I said Amherst is around $25,000, $26,000. We need the taxpayers, not just parents, the taxpayers deserve the choice for our family, for our grandchildren, and all children to have the best education they can, become the best they can, and be performing adults in the world now. So thank you very much for your time.
Wait a minute, maybe some questions for you. Any questions? None.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, is there anybody else who wants to speak or hasn't spoken on 367? Seeing none, that ends the hearing on House Bill 367. Let's see, this one here. I have 464 here. Okay, we'll open up the hearing on House Bill 446. And this Representative Cornelli?
I am.
That's you? Oh, yes, Cornell.
Cornell.
I thought Corelli. Cornell. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. For the record, my name is Representative Patty Cornell, and I represent District 22, Ward 11 in Manchester. The original intent of this bill was to be a safeguard for parents and children and to ensure that parents who parentally placed their children with a disability in a for-profit private school were aware that they were not included in the definition of a parentally placed private school children with disabilities. Rep. Cordelli put in an amendment to that, which I agree made the bill better. And so it would, the Department of Education will make up a written explanation of parental rights to services for all parents who are going to parentally place their children in the EFA program and know what is offered for students with disabilities in every program. And that's all it is. It's a safeguard for parents to ensure that when they place their child in a program, they know that they're going to get the services that they're hoping for. And just one other thing, it says that it amends RSA 19194-B, and it was supposed to have been corrected. It's F, :4, Roman numeral 3. So it's the wrong RSA. It should be F, not B. B deals with charter schools, and F is responsibilities of the scholarship organization. So I don't know if how that gets done, but.
Any questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Representative Milo? Mel Meyer? I don't see him. We have another representative. Which one? Okay, then we'll go in order here. Renee Austin, did you want to speak? How about Vanessa Blaze? Welcome.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for hearing me speak today. My name is Vanessa Blaze. I serve as the Director of Policy and Planning for the New Hampshire Council on Developmental Disabilities, and I'm here today to show our support for HB 446. We believe that if the purpose of the EFAs is to give parents control over their education, then they should be given all the information they need to understand how their placement decisions will affect their child's support services. The laws in place. This bill merely requires informing parents of students who access support services in school what their rights are under the IDEA, which is the Individuals with Disabilities Act. It makes it clear which schools must follow IDEA and which are not required. This is not to say that some for-profit private schools do not provide supportive services, but they're not necessarily required to do so. We feel that it's important for parents to have this information when they're making their placement decisions, and we ask why you would be against having parents get that information. Does anyone have any questions? Thank you very much.
That we have people missing here that are all in other areas testifying on their bills, so we keep switching back and forth here. So I don't see any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Amy Shaw.
All right. I am the epitome of a neurodiverse adult, so before I start, we are specifically talking about developmental disabilities and the EFA funds? Yes? No? Okay. So my family, and I would think that my family is unique, but honestly, I've met like 2 or other families that are just like mine in our situation, our story. I would have loved to have had access to the EFA funds back when we were in the public school system, and I had no idea what we were going to do because our public school system failed our children. Their idea of what a developmental disability is or a special need is far different than what reality is, I guess. So, and I'm not saying that in a mean way. It's just the amount of time, energy, and money spent fighting for my child to be safe at our public school was probably, if not more, than the amount that would have given us in a year. And that was because my child, her disability did not affect her education. It just affected her safety. It definitely affected her education, but when you're that young, what is neurotypical and what is not? You're still in a very, very, no man's land, and you can't specifically say, like, example, I'd like to get testing for dyslexia, the one testing that is not covered by health insurance. Well, she doesn't meet it. It's not normal until second year of second grade or whatever. So first grade, it's still normal. You have to wait. Second grade. Okay, second grade, you said it's not normal. So should we start with testing? No, it's not until halfway through second year. Halfway through second year, as a whole year has gone by and my daughter has been done a disservice, I'm still fighting for what my daughter needs. So my view of what, a special education and a child needs who has disabilities does not match, does not help my family. And that's exactly why we left the public school system. So I would love to answer any questions. I can answer any of them.
Okay. Any questions? Questions? Thank you very much. Is there anybody else in the audience who'd like to speak on House Bill 446? If not, then we'll close the hearing on House Bill 446. Now we'll move on to House Bill 464. Let's see here. And the prime sponsor is Ms. Leo. I'm going to limit you to 3 minutes.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Representative Erica Leon, and I represent the town of Derry. I am a homeschooling mom, but I do not participate in the EFA program. This program provides an opportunity for families to access funds that would allow them to either stay in or reach an educational option that otherwise could be challenging for them and compete for dollars needed for other needs. We have a number of different student groups that would benefit greatly from having no income cap on eligibility. And I will speak to why these students deserve to have this opportunity to have the money follow them in their particular situations. The first two groups of students, foster children and homeless children, both have one major that would need to have no income cap. Both would have a major life change happening that could otherwise kick them out of a non-public school that they currently attend. If you had a child in a private school who had to move to foster care, or if you had a child in private school whose house burned down and they were suddenly homeless, both of those children would be in severe need and may lose both their family and their school, or their house and their school at the same time. We should give this option for those children to be eligible for EFA accounts regardless of the income levels. Secondly, we have the children who have a full-time active duty military or National Guard parent. These families do a lot for us. They keep us safe. These parents write a check for anything up to and including their life in service to our country and our state. Allowing their children to have access to a greater range of educational opportunities, regardless of their income, I think is just one small step in saying thank you to these families for the sacrifices they make. Persistently bullied students are a major issue. We've done things in order to try and address the fact that sometimes bullying is ignored in schools. Last session, we added a right of private action for a parent to sue if their child is bullied. But why should it get to that point? If you have a child who has had 3 documented bullying episodes, then they should have that opportunity to leave the school and find an option that's safer for them. In bullying, it goes both ways. Some kids that are bullied, it's a huge problem for them, but there's other kids that are bullied and then come back and fight back the only way they know how, which is with violence. So allowing persistently bullied students to take the state portion of their funds to another option protects both them and potentially other kids around them while they're able to get into a safer environment. Then children with a disability. We had a good discussion about making sure that parents understood exactly what they were undertaking if they leave the public school system and work to arrange their disability services on their own. Some disabilities just need more time. Some disabilities are better.
Your time is up. Could you wrap it up, please?
Yes, sorry. Some children just need a different situation. I was hoping that I could have some time to speak about the English language learner issue. There is a severe issue in the Manchester Public Schools where they are not graduating children out of the ELL program, and they are being treated differently because they are English language learners and being discriminated against for being Hispanic. these families, whether or not they're within those income limits, should be able to find a school that does not discriminate against them and to use these funds. So with that, I'll wrap up. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions? Senator Gendro.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Leon, for being here to testify. You mentioned that you are a homeschool mom.
Yes.
K through 12?
We have a 10-year-old right now. Their grade levels, he's working on one book very slowly that's a college textbook, so I don't like to put grade levels on them.
Okay.
But we have a 9-year-old and a 10-year-old right now.
Okay, could follow up?
Follow up.
Could you share with us a couple of examples that were highlights in your homeschooling experience?
Oh, thank you. Homeschooling actually gives us a lot of flexibility. Before I joined the legislature, we would go and visit family in California for 6 to 8 weeks over Christmas and basically go through all the museums in Los Angeles and San Diego and spend a couple days at each, getting really deep into the natural history, into the art, and the La Brea tar pits to the point where my son is still obsessed with saber-toothed cats.
One more follow-up?
Follow-up.
So would you say taking those trips was probably more educational potentially than diving into a textbook, say?
It made it a lot more real. I know that when I was a student of the public schools in California, I got to go to the Museum of Natural History once. And being able to see those exhibits, see the size of these things, look at the overlapping time periods, and how just at the skeletons, the difference in pelvises between different animals, and the way that they functioned in their animal relationships, it was just groundbreaking to actually see that live. And while there's a lot of other places where you could use the EFA funds if you're schooling at home, because it's not technically homeschooling, you could use those for a lot of other options, like the co-op that my boys go to when I'm here in the legislature. That's one where I'm paying somebody to do part of my teaching for me. I do that myself because I'm not in the EFA program, but there are a lot of families that can't afford to do that, especially with what we've seen with inflation. I mean, if you look at the approximate $4,000 increase in costs for the average family, that's what this is. So all we're doing is making those families whole again after these costs of inflation.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Wendy Santiago.
Good morning, Madam Chair and committee. My name is Wendy Santiago. I'm going to tell you just a brief story and my thoughts on.
Because you have 3 minutes, so.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. So I'm coming to you today to discuss a growing concern that many students face, bullying, or in other words, schoolyard abuse is what I like to call it. My child is one of those students. In his 3rd year of school, my child faced threats and physical harm daily. He would come home from school with ripped pants, and at times I would receive calls from the school principal that my son had been forcefully pushed to the ground by other students. I've been told that his knees were bleeding and his injuries may need medical attention. His diagnosis, severe bursitis to his knees. I don't know if you can see this picture, but this is a picture of a week or so after healing, which he still was not able to go back to school with. After many complaints to the school, their unwillingness to help, I chose to take my son from this school. I am thankful that I could receive the help from Educational Freedom Act. If this funding had not been available or an option to us, I would not have been able to send my child to school. There are many children, especially those of vulnerability that are described here in House Bill 464, who face many difficult types of challenges. Learning is just complex for them, and adding a layer of schoolyard abuse is just another layer of things they don't need to deal with. The school committee, the state have vowed to protect our children from such acts as this. These acts of schoolyard abuse is a crime. If done anywhere else, it would be punishable. as it is outlined in the RSA laws of 137B of physical and emotional abuse is a form of violence against others. As a teacher, as a training counselor, I can see firsthand the emotional damages affecting of a hostile learning environment on students. Children who face bullying stay in a fight or flight-like mode, causing the inability to retain an understanding in the academic work that's expected of them, causing them to fall behind. According to the pediatric psychology, children who face bullying can develop mental health disorders such as PTSD, social and emotional problems, anxiety, personality disorders, depression, and suicidal ideation, as we have seen multiple times throughout the news. That can last, these mental disorders can last long-term or even for all throughout life, adulthood. Schoolyard abuse is not discriminatory toward financial status, color, gender, or grade. So the question stands, why do I need to debate whether or not families can afford to choose school that will allow their children to feel safe in a learning environment? I know that this House agrees with me what needs to be done, but knowing what needs to be done doesn't mean much unless that you know what to do for it to be done.
Your time is up. Could you wrap it up, please?
Yes. So I need you to pass House Bill 464 to remove the income limit so that all children can have a fair and safe education.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Any questions? Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you for hearing me today.
Is Representative Luno here? I don't think so. Okay. Aubrey Friedman?
Madam Chair, committee members, again, Aubrey Friedman from Bridgewater. I also speak in support of this bill, and for many of the same reasons that I mentioned before, increasing competition, forcing the government schools to do a better job by having parents will have the option to leave, more options. So that's, again, the competition angle I mentioned before. Also, it should reduce the tax bills eventually if more people choose EFAs. What's interesting about this bill, it comes at it from a different angle, looking at groups of kinds of kids who might need it that maybe has nothing to do with family income. As was mentioned, foster kids, English second language, various kids that would have a more of a challenge in life. And why not give their families more options for better education that wouldn't fit into the traditional government schools. What's interesting about this bill too, if you look at sections 6G, J, and K, this isn't about the kids. This is actually about the types of schools, reasons to be able to access the EFA. And it's pretty, let's see, G is about, let me get it here. About bullying, schools where they allow bullying. J is about the failing schools, the lowest performing in the state. And K is actually dangerous schools. So wouldn't you, if kids have to go to schools like that, I would say that'd be a pretty good reason to let them out of it, give them more options. And it's kind of cruel to, if kids are going to schools like that, actually dangerous bullying and failing, cruel to keep them in there. So this bill would allow them their families an opt-out, and I say it's a good thing. And those are the reasons I support this bill.
Thank you. Questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Representative Clayton Wood?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for listening to my testimony. I'm going to tie into Representative Langen, what she said at the beginning. I'm in favor of the committee supporting it, 464. And I believe these are special categories that require special explanation. She started to explain about a particular problem with language. I think they all fit in these categories. I'm going to talk about two. And again, I'm looking at not blaming anything, but just how EFAs can provide solutions. The bullying is something I've started to look in for the past couple of weeks when I saw this bill coming to the front. You've already heard testimony twice today. I've heard uncountless testimony on last Tuesday at SB 272 about bullying. I was actually surprised how severe bullying seems to have gotten, at least to some people. Again, the EFA, I think, is one of the only solutions we have that has quick response. There was a woman testifying today that we can't wait. These children cannot wait. And I think the bullying is a good example of something that can't wait. This is something they can act on fast, and I believe it's the only help these parents have from this committee that they can work that quickly on. We just don't have enough time. And I'm not trying to address the actual problem. I'm just looking at the need. The other case is I'm here on behalf of my constituents. Both Pittsfield schools were classified as comprehensive support and improvement schools. These schools are designated once every 3 years as showing the most significant academic achievement and student performance challenges. So we're just the way this is presented, they're already looking at this as a 3-year solution. I've been querying my district several times to find out what action they have in place on this problem, and I have received nothing so far. I know they're working on it. However, what I'm trying to get a point to this board is immediate responses are necessary. Some of these people need to take advantage of tutors and that type of thing so their students don't fall into this category of Pittsfield High School rate for 2022 was 54%. Dismal. A lot of explanations for that, but the problem is if it's one of your children, it's terrible. And for 2021 was 64%. And again, this classification is anything under 67%. So it looked like they were already there before this happened. And now we're just starting to fix this program. I'm not saying they're not going to be able to do something about this. However, for the parents that it's affecting this year, they need to look at other solutions. So I think the EFAs do provide a unique opportunity. I think we need to look at what works well in there. And I don't think it's going to take you long to figure out the success here. I think we can get plenty of people to come in and tell you for themselves. So I know you were running late on time, and I appreciate your listening to my testimony, and I'll answer any questions.
Questions from the committee members? Seeing none. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Louise Spencer.
Hi, Madam Chair. Thank you very much for taking my testimony. My name's Louise Spencer. I'm from Concord, New Hampshire. And I am here opposed to HB 464 on many accounts. But as a taxpayer, I am just shocked by the fact that the committee would be considering and the legislature would be considering passing a bill where the cost is indeterminable and completely open-ended, and that can run into the millions and millions and millions of dollars, because this bill would basically create universal access to education freedom accounts. That seems to me fiscally totally irresponsible, and I'm really just amazed that that's even being considered as a possibility. It seems the sky's the limit. Originally, it was a $3 million program that ran to $25 million. Now we're talking about 60 million. There's very little accountability. The public has not been told where this money is going and how it's being spent. And I would rather see us take that money to the extent the legislature feels it's available, which apparently you do, and put it into our public schools. Every single problem addressed in this bill can be addressed if we just renewed our commitment to our public schools and fixing the problems that we find there. What about the children left behind? It's fine if you have a parent who can advocate for you, but so many of our kids don't. And they're left in failing schools in Pittsfield or in schools that are underfunded in Berlin. Why would we do that to our children? Why wouldn't we create a system where the needs of every child are met? This to me feels like an unjust and unfair bill, and I urge you to ITL it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thank you very much. Jocelyn Briggs, do you want to speak on this one? Jocelyn? Okay, then we'll have Ryan Hawkins.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Hello again. Good morning. For the record, Brian Hawkins representing NEA New Hampshire. I won't repeat about half of my testimony, which applies, I think, to both 367 and 464 about the that we feel it's premature to expand the program at this time. I did want to raise a few issues. First and foremost, I think the unlimited income is very concerning to us. It should be concerning to the legislature as far as the dollars that we're spending out of the Education Trust Fund for this program. As I said, in 367, when they originally passed this, there was no income limit for anyone, and the Senate deliberately limited the incoming eligibility of the program to 300% of FPL. In my written testimony, I'll leave you with some specific concerns about some of the services that students could be missing out on that is included in some of these categories. We've already talked about, students with disabilities who elect an EFA are required to sign a waiver acknowledging that they're giving up rights under IDEA. The military families, one of the benefits of being in a public school for military families is that they participate in the Military Interstate Children's Compact, which is an agreement among states and school districts that address key, I'm quoting here from the report, and my written will cite this, so I won't read the whole thing to you, that address key educational transition issues encountered by military families, including enrollment, placement, attendance, eligibility, and graduation. And the compact is adopted by all 50 states and Washington, D.C., but it does not extend to non-public schools. Also, the bullying law does not apply for private. So I think that's important. And then specifically to some of the categories that have to do, that include the language about who lives within the geographic boundaries of a school, which has been identified as a comprehensive support and improvement school. We think that this language is very vague. And so the concern here is how that would be interpreted. So if there's a charter school, for example, which is designated CSI, and there are several, I think 7 or 8 charter schools designated CSI, public charters are required to accept students from anywhere in the state. And so what is the geographic jurisdiction of that charter school? Is it the entire state of New Hampshire? I think the legislature ought to know that before they go ahead and pass a bill with that language in it, because obviously that could be tremendously expansive. You know, in a slightly smaller category, if there is a CSI school in the city of Manchester, for example, in the Manchester School District, does the geographic boundary of that include their neighborhood school, or does it include the Manchester school system? I don't think that that's clear in the bill. And then I think most of my other comments were covered in the hearing. I know you're running long, so I don't want to repeat things that have already been said. So I'll close my testimony there and leave my written for the committee.
Questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
No questions.
Okay.
Mary Wilkie?
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Again, my name is Mary Wilkie. I'm from Concord. And I would ask you to vote ITL on House Bill 464. All the reasons I discussed in my previous testimony about this being premature, given the lack of oversight and information, apply to this bill as well, so I won't repeat those. But I'd like to raise a concern about a few of the categories in this bill. One of the categories is students who are eligible for free or reduced school meals. These students are already eligible for EFAs because to qualify for free and reduced lunch, they have to be at, believe it's below 185% poverty. And even if the bill this session to raise that to 300% of poverty passed, they're still eligible. They don't need this exception. And there could be unintended consequences of keeping this exception in the bill. For instance, some school districts in some states have been offering free lunch to all students. So if a school district in New Hampshire did that, would that make their students automatically eligible for EFAs? There's no legitimate reason to include this category in the bill because those children are already covered. The previous speaker talked about the vagueness of living within the geographic boundaries of CSI schools. One other problem with that language is that the Virtual Learning Academy Charter School, VLAX, is a charter school that's 100% online, and it's been designated CSI. And it takes students from all over the state. So is its geographical bounds the entire state? If so, then everybody in New Hampshire would be eligible for a EFA under this bill. I'd also like to say that suppose you had a school district, the public schools were considered top in the nation in a particular district, but there happened to be a CSI charter school in that same district. There's no reason really to be trying to protect the students in that district if they have access to a fine public school. I suspect the reason to have the CSI exception is to say that if a child has the only option as a public school is to go to a CSI school, then they should have this other option. And while that's a more sympathetic argument than the ones I just mentioned, I'd say, if we have a CSI neighborhood school, shouldn't we focus and prioritize fixing that school? Because no matter how many EFAs you give out, there will be students who cannot use them. Their parents can't afford whatever the difference in tuition might be. The parents can't transport them. The parents aren't paying attention to this option, whatever it might be. There will be students left behind in a CSI school that has dwindling resources, and I feel like we have to think about those children as well. And finally, it's my understanding that New Hampshire does not currently have any schools deemed persistently dangerous. But if we do at some point in time, I would hope we would use what funds we have available to fix the danger, because not every student in that school will be able to take advantage of an EFA, but all students are entitled to go to a school that is safe. For these reasons and more, I ask you to vote ITL on House Bill 464, and I'd like to thank you for your service on this committee.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee members? Seeing none. Thank you very much. Renee Austin.
Hi, I'm Renee Austin. I'm from Derry, New Hampshire. I am an EFA recipient. I want to tell you why we're in EFA. One of the things that was mentioned was that these EFA students haven't been enrolled in a public school. This isn't because of lack of trying. I want to tell you my story. What happened is my friend's daughter, about 10 years ago, went through exactly this. When I saw it happening to my own kids 10 years later, I was extremely concerned. It was the year before COVID, and my daughter was set to attend Derry Public Schools. We met 3 times to establish an IEP. Even though we had private testing paid for by our insurance, the school said, we need to do our own tests because we do not find this valid after not having met her before. It took them just over an hour to do this test. We had meetings with a school staff member, 2 teachers, a sped specialist, and a lawyer. My daughter was compliant on these tests. We asked for things like extra hand washings, direction to put her chewy item in her mouth, and she needed help reading and speech is what the school said is what she needed. I would told this, despite their discoveries, they would not be issuing a 504 or an IEP. They said they were being generous with her and they would sign her up for a half an hour of extra help a week. At that time, her occupational therapist came to one of the meetings. She was appalled that this was happening. She advised me to retain an educational lawyer or hire an educational advocate. The educational advocate would have cost me about $700. The lawyer started at $2,000 retainer. Thank you. Based on published data about the salaries of those individuals, it would have cost the state $2,000 or $3,000 for each of those meetings if they had only done about 15 to 20 minutes of prep work before they met with us. This is per meeting. We had 3 meetings. Some SAU are amazing. I have friends in other towns that they brought their child. They didn't need an initial test. They got help, everything they asked for. But my child was denied, and so many other children are denied. The EFA money that I get rights the wrongs that were done to my special needs child. It prevented her from being in a crowded classroom with a teacher that needs to help 15 other children and doesn't have the resources. Even if they had the resources for the type of para that would be suggested, there are there were up to 300 vacancies for paraprofessionals all across New Hampshire in the past year, meaning that even if IEP said she needed a paraprofessional, they may not have been able to staff her one. The students who are in public schools right now are often sharing their one-on-one IEP paraprofessional to one-on-3, meaning that they legally are entitled to a one-on-one professional, but because they cannot staff, they're one-on-3. I understand that partly this is a money issue, but they're not staffing. And this presents not only an educational downfall, but a serious physical and emotional issue for students who are currently in school. Rather than waste money, having meeting after meeting, asking these teachers to step out of their classroom for these continual IEP meetings, this money helps my child. I think all special needs parents should be able to have this money to help their children, because we're watching dollars be wasted on meeting after meeting after meeting. And I would like to see that money be applied to those children without having these continual meetings that end up with no help and no services.
Thank you. Questions from the members? Seeing none. Thank you very much. Tom DeRosa? Thank you very much. Sarah Scott?
I'll keep this brief. A lot of my points have already been made.
So once again, thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Sarah Scott, and I'm the Deputy State Director for Americans for Prosperity here in New Hampshire. We wholeheartedly support this legislation, and a couple of the key points I just wanted to bring up are really that this bill would give life-changing opportunities to a lot of these at-risk students. People have touched a lot on the bullied students, so I just kind of wanted to add to that. I've worked with a number of bullied students as a martial arts instructor for the last 15 years, and most of the students I worked with were in situations that the schools tried to address and really were not able to. Regardless of how hard we try and the resources we give, there are always going to be students who are bullied. And giving students like that the opportunity to get out of that school can really mean the difference of their life for them. These kids are really impacted in an early age, and their education is really something that determines the future direction of their lives. So giving these students the opportunity to find a situation where they feel safe and secure will give them a lot of opportunities to succeed later on in life. So with that, I'll just kind of conclude. A lot of the points have already been made, so thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions? Thank you. Jamie Colladish from Pittsfield.
Thank you very much for listening today. My name is Jamie Kaladish. I'm here representing the military families. My husband is in his 22nd year in the New Hampshire National Guard, and we fully support this bill and the educational freedom accounts. Due to his service obligations, it makes it very challenging to have a second income in our home. And being a homeschool family, it can be challenging making ends meet with curriculum needs and supplies and co-ops. And the passing of this bill would tremendously aid us and other families like us who serve this state with our service. So please support this bill so that the families can participate in this program and use this money for their education. It's all still going to education. You know, it's whether it's going to the public school or the families are able to use it for their needs. It's still all going to these kids, and they're our future, and we really need it. So please help them and pass this bill. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thank you.
Yep.
Amy Shaw.
Third time's a charm. All right.
That's right.
So, my name is Amy Shaw, and I am the mother of 2 private school kids. We are in the Rochester School District. So, it's very hard to kind of differentiate between all these different bills, but I guess all of these different categories just make it more accessible and more realistic for my children to be able to access funds that they need. The Rochester School District systematically failed my family. They put my child in danger. They made me feel like I was crazy almost. I was talking to someone outside and they're like, you should have filed a lawsuit. I'm like, because there was no responsibility, no accountability for what they did to my family. And, you know, we left a private school to come to public school because of those documented testing that we had done. I heard the public school will help you. Your kid has ADHD, she has anxiety, there's supports there. So I went there and it was the worst experience of our life. I was lost. And I think honestly, like I would really love it if you guys asked any question you had about anything because I can answer it. I just need you to ask it. But our family is just the, you know, the picture perfect family of why this should be here and why it's needed so badly. So I took her to public school just for preschool, but honestly, I knew where it was going and I pulled her as quickly as I could. And without the EFA funds, my kid would still be in public school and she would still have a developmental delay. And she would still be getting no services. And when it comes to services too of private schools, So if I went to public school, I still would have had to get outside PT, speech, OT. I would have had to do all that on my own. So it really didn't make a difference if I actually went to public school because they weren't going to help my family. There are problems anywhere, like everywhere. And this is the other thing too. Public schools are not perfect, but private schools are not perfect either. I have been working with my private school. We've had issues because I'm that parent that will always fight for what my child needs. The difference is there's one who's making you feel like you are less than, like you don't know what you're talking about. And then there's the school that my kids go to now, where I can sit down as a peer and we work together to come with a solution. I don't need to fight for anything. We all want what's best for my kid. It is 10 times what I ever expected I would be able to have. So, and it's not just on those reading and writing, it's about our kids' entire future. I had meetings about feeding. I had meetings about sensory issues. I mean, these are things that the public school would not even look at with me because it did not affect their grades. So, yeah, I really would love it if you'd ask a question, but that's probably it. I could say I could write a story about it.
So you support 464?
I support it wholeheartedly.
Okay. Any questions? Okay. Senator Gendro.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you. I guess my comment is thank you for coming here with your children to testify. I appreciate that. Appreciate your honesty, the rawness of what you've been through, and the courage that it takes to be able to share. Thank you.
And I would love to expand on that story if you guys ever want to hear, but it was serious safety issues that the school slid under the rug. So.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. Is anybody else in the audience who likes to speak? Yes.
Tammy Simmons Garthwaite.
Pardon?
Tammy Simmons Garthwaite. Sorry about that.
I don't know. That's fine.
I'll come up anyways. How's that?
Sure. Why don't you just come up? Just state your name and.
My name is, good morning, and thank you for being here. My name is Tammy Simmons Garthwaite. I'm a former two-term state rep representing West Manchester. I'm not a parent, so I'm not here as a parent. I'm here as someone who represented the types of families that are being impacted by the lack of options in education. I'm also here as a taxpayer, someone who pays to educate everyone else's children in the public schools. And mostly I'm here for the kids in Manchester who are left with no choice but a poor quality education. I'm not sure how familiar you are with the proficiency scores in Manchester schools, or perhaps we should say the non-proficiency scores. Across the district, Manchester scores 28% ELA proficiency, 16% math proficiency, and 16% science proficiency. These are hardly laudable numbers. Two of the worst performing schools in Manchester are Beach Street and Henry Wilson Elementary Schools. According to the most recent data on the New Hampshire Department of Education website, there are about 913 kids between those two schools, and less than 10% of those kids in those schools are proficient in English, math, or science. Less than 10%. More than 3/4 of these students are considered to be economically disadvantaged. So for the sake of argument, let's just presume that those children are already eligible for an ELA based on household income. That still leaves 210 kids in just these two public elementary schools that was assigned to them not by what they need, but where they live, who are almost certainly not proficient in English, not proficient in math, and not proficient in science. In no sane world is less than a 10% success rate at anything considered acceptable. Yet the vast majority of kids in Manchester's public schools, I guess, are supposed to just accept failure. Even in some of the less bad Manchester elementary schools, none come close to 50% proficiency in anything. The only thing that Manchester schools seem to be proficient at is spending a lot of tax dollars with abysmal results. In just 10 years, we have decreased our student population by more than 3,600 students. yet we spend upwards of $90 million more every year. So we're not, it's not about the number of dollars, it's about how we're spending them. And yet they continue to serve up this low quality education to the Manchester kids year after year after year. It is simply unacceptable to limit the educational opportunities for the kids at Beach Street or Henry Wilson schools. It's not reasonable to expect them to wait for the school board or the school district to figure out how to actually educate kids. These kids do not have time to wait. As a taxpayer, I want to see some sort of return on my investment. As a member of the community, spending upwards of $200 million locally every year in Manchester with such abysmal results is just not okay. Rather than listening to lawyers argue about if the state is funding enough of the bill for an adequate education, whether it comes out of my left pocket or my right pocket, how about we argue about if the kids are even getting an adequate education in the public schools? A less than 10% success rate is not okay. It is not acceptable. I urge you to support HB 464 and give the kids in these schools, in all schools across the state, more opportunities to attend a school that will better work for them, one who can actually educate them and prepare them for life. Passage of this bill is a benefit for the taxpayers of Manchester, and more importantly, it is a benefit for the kids. Sorry. It is always about the kids, not about the school, not about the teachers, not about the unions, about the kids. Thank you.
Wait a minute, we might have some questions for you.
Sorry.
Questions? Do you have a question? We don't have a question for you.
Thank you again.
Thank you very much. Okay, sorry I missed you on the sign-up sheet here. So anybody else? We have one more person here who likes to speak. Just state your name.
Good morning, I'm Lydia Clegg, and this is Amelia Jo Clegg, and Tayson Clegg is in the back. First off, I'm a Manchester resident, we're homeowners, and our kids have benefited from the EFA. I'm also a foster parent for over 10 years, and I also work in the field. We've had kids come in our home who have really floundered in public schools. Often they're sent home. I've got so many phone calls. Hey, can you come pick up this kiddo? He's not doing well. These kiddos come from trauma, and they would benefit from the EFA funds to be able to access private schools that provide trauma-informed care. As many of you probably know, that kids from foster care have poor outcomes educationally. They're less likely to graduate from high school and have significant learning disabilities at times. A little bit more about our family. We adopted 5 beautiful kids from foster care. They each have their own unique educational needs. When COVID happened, we really floundered as a family. And thankfully, we were able to access EFA funds to move our kids from Manchester public schools, which were failing our kids, to private schools. Our son Tay, who is now in the 5th grade, went from testing, his NEWA scores were about in the 34th percentile, and now they're in the 78th percentile. While scores don't really matter to me as much as knowing that they are learning and thriving. In June 2021, as I said, we adopted 5 kids. 2 of our kids have very special needs, and in June 2021, our son Caden passed away due to medical complications that he had battled his whole life. We were able to use EFA funds that following fall so that our kids could continue their private education. The school, St. Benedict's Academy, rallied around our family. They provided so much support. I don't think any public school could ever, once a week, my daughter Corabelle, my 2nd grader now, would go have lunch with the school counselor, and they provided support for her. The amount of individualized support and attention this small private school with very low tuition was able to provide our family was just beyond words. Our kids need this. All kids need this. We have had bullying situations in the public schools, and now our kids really are thriving and happy. We also have some special needs that are able to be met in private schools. 81% of 2nd graders at my daughter's, what would be her homeschool, are not proficient in reading. That's my daughter. That's now. Kids don't have time to wait. They're they're learning now. We can't continue throwing money at a failing system when there are solutions that are available right now. And that's why I urge you to just, all three of those bills, I am in huge support of them. Thank you for your time.
Any questions? Senator Jandra.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for being here and sharing, and very sorry for your loss. That's
Thank
a
you.
tough one.
Do you want to say anything, Jojo? You say you love your school? Okay, she doesn't want to speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, last call. Anybody else sitting here would like to speak
Madam Chair.
on four? What?
Yeah. All right. Mr. Yates has submitted 2 written testimonies. Would it be okay to ask, would you come up and share just briefly, verbally?
It's not Yates, it's somebody.
It's, you're part of Yes Every Kid?
Yeah.
Okay, would you be willing to just kind of share verbally, just a?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm Tom DeRosa with Be Fresh Consulting. Yes, Every Kid is our client. I didn't want to take up any more time since we were, running behind schedule on a lot of what was submitted in that written testimony had already been said. But we are fully supportive of the bills. We believe in expanding choice and opportunity for all families.
Question?
Okay, go ahead. Senator Jandra.
So the question I have then, because it looks like this organization is in Arlington, Virginia. Are you seeing trends?
Yeah, so in the first letter there that we put in there, I added some information about some states that we're moving toward what we call education freedom accounts. They call them education choice in other states that go by different names. Texas, Florida, Idaho, Utah. There's a number of states that North Dakota had something. I think just vetoed. But there's a certain trend, absolutely, where folks are heading in this direction, and much more expansive than what our program currently is.
Okay, good, thank you. Thanks for letting me put you on the spot.
Of course, no problem.
Are you all
Thank
set
you.
then?
I am all set.
Anybody else has a question? Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Yep.
Okay, anybody else in the audience who likes to speak on this particular bill? 464. Seeing none, that concludes the hearing. Thank you very much. The committee will go into executive session. Let's look at any bill in particular, 364, 492.
Can I do 364 first?
Let's do 364 first because that's a lower number, right? So 364 has to do with relative to transportation for students attending career and technical education centers.
Madam Chair, I move OTP on 364.
You say OTP on that one?
I'll second it.
Do we have a second? Jandro seconds. Discussion.
Madam Chair, I just remind you that this came out of the House on a 20-0 vote. It's a bipartisan bill supported by both Representative Ladd and Representative Myler, which is probably our new record. And I'd say we should support the bill.
Any others? Okay, all those in favor of OTP? Opposed?
Move consent.
Consent? Second for consent? Prentice? Any discussion on consent? All those in favor of consent?
Aye.
Aye.
That's 5-0. Who wants to take it out?
It's a consent bill. I'll take it out.
Yeah. Did you say?
Of course you will.
I'll be happy to take it out.
Lang wants to take it
I don't
out.
think that's what I heard.
Okay, that's one down.
492, this is to do with the books.
492, yep. Did anybody find out anything more about whether these books are actually complimentary?
Oh, Diana said she was gonna.
I thought she just said, I'll be happy if they're complimentary because then I would have. That's
I mean,
another.
the issue becomes whether they're complimentary or not. Let's just, so that if there's a group of extra books that show up and DOE says, we're gonna give these to legislators, that's great. But- Oh, all right.
Yeah, we need a
We can have
motion.
discussion.
Do we have a
Well, I'm gonna make a
motion?
motion OTP.
We have a
We'll go
motion,
OTP on
OTP on
492.
492. Do we have a second? Do you second it? Benson? Okay.
What was the motion?
Discussion,
OTP.
discussion on the books. I find the RSAs very helpful. It's just, I assume that every year we will get a new one with every other new RSAs and updates and everything else. Granted, we can look at our computers, that's true, we can do that, but it's awfully handy.
Well, I think, Madam Chair, it says that this bill requires the Department of Education to provide, but it doesn't say free of charge.
Right.
So I think, they have been providing it.
But that comes out of their budget.
So, Madam Chair, I guess I'm taking a little bit bigger picture. That's what I'm saying. I'm not in favor of this bill because number one, I think the departments will provide if the chair asks. At least that's been my experience in every single committee I've served on. The Secretary of State provided election law committee, the election law books, the Fish and Game provided the Fish and Game books when we asked them. They gave every member a copy when asked. I think if we pass this bill, we're going to be seeing a whole plethora of these for every single committee, the 20 some odd committees that are in the House of Representatives all saying, I want my book. And I think that we
have
should.
20 and 20, there'll be 25 books that they have to give to the Education Committee.
Right. So I guess it just sets, I feel it sets a bad precedent by requiring, I think, again, if we ask, I think the agency be more than willing to supply. At least that's been my experience in my 6 years in the House, that they're more than willing to provide if you're asked for it. So I'm not sure I'll support the committee recommendation, but I do think that we're setting a bad precedent.
So did you just say that all the other committees that you're on, you get your books?
I'm gonna, if your question was, will all the other committees want the books? The answer is gonna be yes. That I think that all the other committees, the chairs from the other committees will start submitting bills saying, I want to make sure I get my book too. And then we're going to be every agency given, and which I think will happen anyway. If the chair feels or a member of the committee feels that it's necessary. Again, I've never been told no on this kind of information by a department when I've asked for it. So I'm sure if I went to the Department of Education, say, can I get an education book? They would give it to me if I asked for it. I think it's but there are some people that don't want a book because like I'm a computer guy, so I tend to read the computer and look it up that way. So I don't want a book. I'm happy with having it digital.
Senator Prentice?
Thank you, Chair Ward. Just pulling up, so, this is the second year in a row that we've heard this. And both years it's been bipartisan, in fact, and this, so that, I just want to point that out. And I remember the chair, Chairman Ladd, although I don't believe he testified, I don't know if he was a co-sponsor or he voted in favor of this in committee last year. So looking at this year, in committee, it was a 19-1 vote. It was a voice vote on the floor, it went to finance, and then it was a 24-1 vote before it comes over to us. So, this is the second year in a row that we've heard that this is something that this particular committee feels like they need to do their job. Senator Lang, I understand what you're saying, and this goes back to like last week. I used the cow out of the barn, and and you said sometimes you can close the door, and I wonder if so this is getting they used to get these books, and for some reason they stopped getting them.
I know.
And folks on that committee in the House, I use my computer, but the folks in the committee in the House really feel like it's a barrier for them, and they want that consistent access. So, if it's a matter of, I'm just going to go back to the language quick, and then the question becomes, if we put if requested, not automatic, if members request them, then they get them. Is there anything stopping that from happening now? Is the place where I still remain unsure.
Well, I know when we had this last time around, we've learned that they were going to stop printing them and they were not going to be available. And then I heard a price tag of $100 per book. So, granted, it's a resource. You don't always have your computer there or time to look at it. So, and I agree with Senator Lang. I think the requires might be a little too strong.
So could we agree to, again, to put maybe a committee amendment in that says at the beginning of each session of the biennium, at the request of the committee chair, let me see if I can have, now I got to clean that sentence up. At the request of the committee chair, providing, you got my point. I want to put somewhere in there, put a language that says the request of the committee chair that the book will be provided.
And then the committee, may I?
Sure, absolutely. Yep.
So Senator Lang, great. And so that would mean that, the committee chair would poll their members and say, who wants a book? Like, if you ask me now who wants a book, I'm going to be like, I'm okay. But that way, not every, those who need them get them, and it runs through the committee chair. And if that precedence spreads out throughout the legislature, it does. It's still less expensive than it's still less expensive than computers or iPads.
Right.
So I think we should.
Do you want to,
So do you want to say after the
Providing a
biennium, at the
physical
request of
copy.
the chair, provide a physical copy?
Right.
So Senator Ward, I just want to connect back over with Senator Lang, if I may. So we're thinking about line 3 at the beginning of each session of the biennium, comma, at the request of the committee chair on behalf. Do we want to say on behalf of the members? Because
on the request by the committee chair, asking to provide a physical copy of a copy on a portable data storage device or a searchable internet database.
okay, so
So if we said at the beginning of each session of the biennium, at the request of the committee chair, provide a physical copy of, a copy on a portable data storage device of, or a searchable internet database to the New Hampshire education laws annotated. So it's either a book, or portable data storage.
But if you have a data storage, you still need a computer to put it on.
Right.
But that,
Like it is.
if I may, I think that's their own, like a downloadable version. Yeah, so they, like I say I wanted, I mean, I can access through Google and look at it, but if I wanted a downloadable version that was just that, where all the statutes were combined, you know, education statutes in one document, portable, downloadable PDF, that would have to be made available. Because that's the way actually a lot of books are now made available.
Yeah.
But I just want to make sure it's at the request of the chair on behalf of the members who need them, so it's not a blanket
Yeah,
like
okay.
everybody
That's-
gets it, because not everybody wants it.
Right. That sounds good to me.
All right, so we.
So we're saying on line 3, at the beginning of each session of the biennium, at the request of the committee chair, shall provide a physical copy of, a copy on a portable drive. Is that what we're saying?
To the members who would like one or something like that, to the members, because like we have a couple of members who are using computers. That's how they look. They don't need the physical copy.
On behalf, at the request of the chair, on behalf of the members of the committee, I don't think we're using the words in need, and I don't want to use who requested. At the request of the chair, on behalf of the members in need, on behalf of the members
Or desire.
who desire, we're getting close, this is who desire, who
Want.
want. Yeah, I just don't want to use request twice if I don't have to. Just feels bad.
To the standing committees that oversee that.
Or is it the chair at the end, that the chair of the committee will survey the members. All right, I'm gonna stop there. Go ahead, Senator Lang.
Madam Chair, I think we're overcomplicating it. I think it is at the request of the chair. The chair can say, I need 19 copies.
Okay.
Right? And just leave it at that. I don't think we need to put that in statute. I think that at the request of the chair, he can designate how many copies he needs for his members and not have to do it in statute.
Okay.
At that point, we can also let them know, do we need one or do we need 3?
Right, that's what the chair will tell him when he takes a polling of the committee and says, hey, in this case, we'd only need 3, but, you know, instead of 5. And so the chair would say, hey, can you please provide? So at the request of the chair, they'll provide the books, however many number the chair requests.
You have that, Pete? Okay, so there'll be a committee amendment. Okay?
We have no TP with that committee amendment? Is that what we're doing?
We do. Oh, wait a minute, no, we have an OTP, but we've got a committee amendment. We have to vote on that.
So I'll move the amendment as the committee amendment as we spoke, adding at the request of the chair.
Second that.
20 seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so now we have OTP with the amendment. Do we need any more discussion? Did we have a second on the OTP?
Yes,
Senator
Prentice did.
Okay. So all those in favor of, or to pass with a committee amendment?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's 5-0.
Move consent?
Consent?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of consent?
Aye.
Aye. It's 5-0. Do you want to take it out?
I'll do the blurb.
Okay.
I'm gonna thumb wrestle you.
Prentice will take it out. Okay, and now we have 5:30.
Before we make a motion.
I'm gonna
Before before we make a motion, can I ask one question? You were going to talk to, I believe it was Rep. Salisbury, who'd had some concerns.
I don't remember. So, I mean, I know I haven't spoken with him.
Okay, there was, you were going to talk, maybe, I don't know if it was, there was a letter in our file.
Yeah, I see a letter here.
Yeah, and
Madam Chair? Madam Chair,
Yeah.
I move OTP on 530L.
He said, I took up my concerns with the House Education Chairman. Let the bill go through and present those concerns to the Senate Education.
I'll second the OTP.
So, Madam Chair, if I remember right, Representative Spilsbury's argument was it gives the non-conforming towns, in other words, if you have 3 towns in a district, one wants to get out, the other 2 towns have overriding say on the single town by that 2/3 negative or 3/5 negative that's required. He was hoping that would be lower. But I think that this provides a necessary balance and structure needed for discussing these kind of the dissolution or the removal of a town from a given school district.
So are you okay with it? Did you say O2P on this one?
Yes. Yes, my motion was OTP and
Jandro seconds it.
it came out of committee, Education Committee 20-0 on the consent calendar.
Discussion on O2P of this one?
I mean, I previously represented one of the communities that had an issue with trying to withdraw. That was with Charlestown, so you.
Well, I have the Dempster and Goshen.
Ah, okay, I was thinking about Charlestown.
Now I have Charlestown.
Now you have Charlestown, so that was very problematic under the existing statute, and this is supposed to bring all voices, or a majority of voices to the table versus just one, because it affects the entire cooperative school district.
Right.
And it's, in the House, it was a 20-0 out of committee, and it looks like it was a voice vote on the floor. So my main concern with this, would be if they didn't have multiple voices, multiple communities being able to speak to withdrawal versus just one community.
Right.
So that's just my way of saying that I think that this is fine.
Okay. All those in favor of OTP?
Aye.
Aye. That's
Move consent.
Second.
Any problem with the consent? Want to discuss it? All those in favor of consent? Aye. 5-0. Do you want to take it out, Jandro?
Sure.
Jandro will take it out. Okay. Anything else? I don't think there's anything from today's that we need to address, so we should address. We need to look at some of those written testimonies and take a look at those.
Move to leave executive session.
I have a motion to leave executive session. Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Executive session is